Title: Do you remember me, human? The alien woman claimed to recognize me. Tom was just an ordinary man. He worked as a technician at a busy spaceport called Brighthaven Station. It was not a big job, but Tom liked it. Every day, ships from faraway planets came and went. He fixed small things on the ships: wires, engines, and broken lights. Most of the time, no one noticed him. That was fine with Tom. He liked quiet work. He liked simple days. One day, something unusual happened. Tom was standing by Dock 7, holding a small toolbox. He had just finished fixing a loose panel on a trade ship. He wiped his hands with a cloth and was about to leave when he saw her. An alien woman stood nearby, looking at him. She was tall and graceful. Her skin was pale blue, and her hair was silver, shining softly in the station lights. Her clothes were smooth and white, almost glowing. But the thing Tom noticed most were her eyes. They were silver too, deep and calm, like the surface of a still lake. She walked toward him. Her steps were light, almost like she was floating. Tom felt nervous. He was not used to talking with aliens, except for small things like "Please sign here" or "Your ship is ready." But this woman was looking straight at him, as if she knew him. She stopped in front of him. For a moment, she said nothing. Then very softly, she spoke. "Do you remember me, human?" Her voice was clear and smooth. It sounded kind. But Tom was confused. He had never seen her before. He was sure of it. "I'm sorry," Tom said slowly. I don't think we've met." The alien woman tilted her head slightly. She did not look upset. She looked thoughtful, as if she expected his answer. She smiled a little. "My name is Nara," she said. "I am from Valerian." Tom nodded politely. "I've heard of Valerian," he said. "It's far from here." She gave a small nod. "Yes, very far." Then she looked at him closely again. "But we have met before." Tom felt a strange feeling in his chest. He did not know why, but something about her words made him feel uneasy. Not in a bad way, but like he was forgetting something important. "I don't remember," Tom said honestly. "I'm just a technician." Nara smiled again softly. "You were not always a technician," she said. "Once you were a boy on a ship with your father." Tom blinked. "That was a long time ago," he said. "My father had a cargo ship. We traveled a lot." Nara nodded. "Yes, you came to a stormy world. Do you remember that?" Tom tried to think. A stormy world. They had been to many places. But slowly, like a door opening, a picture came into his mind. He saw himself as a boy, sitting in the small cabin of his father's ship. Outside the window, dark clouds flashed with lightning. The ground was broken, and the air was full of dust. "Yes," Tom said quietly. I remember." "You found someone," Nara said gently. "A child, hurt and afraid." Tom stared at her. His heart beat faster. "That was you." Nara's eyes softened. "Yes," she said. "You helped me. You gave me food and warmth. You stayed with me until my people came." Tom's mind was spinning. He had almost forgotten that time. He was only a boy. They had rescued someone, but he did not even know who it was back then. His father never spoke about it much. They moved on to the next job, like always. But now that child was standing in front of him. She had grown into this calm, graceful woman. And she had found him. I don't know what to say," Tom whispered. Nara smiled again, peaceful and kind. "You don't need to say anything," she said. "I only wanted you to know. I have searched for you, Tom." Tom felt quiet inside, like the world had slowed down. He never thought his small kindness long ago mattered so much. But to Nera, it did. And something told him this was just the beginning. Title: Do you remember me, human? The alien woman claimed to recognize me. Tom sat on a bench near Dock 7. His hands rested on his lap, but they were still. Normally, they would be moving, fixing something, cleaning tools, but now they did nothing. He was quiet, and his mind was full of thoughts. In front of him stood Nera, the alien woman who claimed to know him. She said they had met long ago. She said he had saved her. But Tom could not remember much. He felt strange about it. Something important had happened, but it was hidden deep inside his mind. It was like trying to see through fog. Nera sat down next to him, her silver eyes watching him carefully. She did not seem upset. She waited patiently, as if she understood. "I'm sorry," Tom said again. His voice was soft. "I don't remember everything. I was very young." Nera nodded. "You were just a child," she said kindly. "But I remember you." Tom turned to look at her. "How did you find me?" he asked. He was curious now. He had lived a quiet life. He worked hard but never did anything special. And yet here was someone from another world sitting beside him. "I have searched for a long time," Nera replied. Her voice was calm, but Tom could hear something else in it. Hope. "When I grew older, I became a traveler. I visited human colonies. I listened for stories about a man named Tom, whose father had an old cargo ship." Tom smiled a little. There are many Toms out there. Nera smiled back, but not many who helped a lost Valari child during a storm. Tom felt quiet again. He could not argue with that. "So, you found me." "Yes," Nera said. "And now, I want you to remember." Tom closed his eyes for a moment. He took a slow breath. Then he opened them again and looked at Nera. "Tell me more," he said. "Maybe it will help." Nera's smile grew a little. She placed her hands on her knees and spoke softly. "You came to our world by accident. Your father was looking for a safe place to land. There was a storm, a great one. Your ship was small, but it was strong. You landed near our research station. But most of my people had already left because of the storm. I was left behind by mistake." Tom listened closely. Her words painted a picture in his mind. He could almost feel the cold metal of his father's ship and hear the sound of the wind outside. "My father and I went out to look for supplies," Tom said slowly, remembering. "We found something, or someone." "It was me," Nera said quietly. "You found me inside the broken building. I was hurt, and I could not walk far. Your father carried me to your ship." Tom nodded. "I remember now," he said. It was like a small light turning on in his mind. He could see himself offering the young alien child a warm blanket. He had given her some food, simple food, but she had smiled at him as if it was a great gift. "I was scared," Nera said, "but you were kind. You sat next to me and told me stories while we waited for my people to come." Tom's face softened. "They came the next day." "Yes," Nera said, "but I never forgot you." For a while, they sat in silence. It was a peaceful silence. Tom thought about the past and how strange life could be. He had helped someone once, without thinking much about it. Now, years later, that someone had found him again. "I didn't think I did anything special," Tom said at last. "But you did," Nera answered gently. "Kindness is always special." Tom smiled a little. He liked her words. They made him feel warm inside. Nera looked around the spaceport. Ships flew by quietly. People walked past them, busy with their own lives. But here on this simple bench, something important was happening. "Would you like to know why I came all this way to find you?" Nera asked. Tom turned to her. "Yes," he said. Please tell me." Nera's silver eyes shone softly in the light. "Because I wanted to thank you in person, and because I wish for you to come with me, to see my world." Tom stared at her in surprise. "Go to Valerian?" he asked. "Yes," Nera said, smiling. "You are welcome there." Tom didn't know what to say at first, but his heart felt curious. He had lived his life in one place for so long. Maybe it was time to see something new. "Maybe I will," Tom said quietly. And deep inside, he felt that this was only the beginning of a new journey. Tom still couldn't believe what was happening. A normal day had turned into something he never expected. He was just a simple technician working quietly on ships. But now, an alien woman named Nera stood before him. She said he had saved her life long ago. And though the memory was faint, Tom was starting to believe her. They sat together on the bench near Dock 7. Around them, the spaceport was busy. Ships came and went. People hurried by with bags and cargo. But for Tom and Nura, the world felt still. Quiet, like they were the only two people there. "You said I helped you," Tom said slowly. "But I don't remember much. I was just a boy." Nera smiled gently. "You were young, yes," she said. "But you were brave. You were kind." Tom felt a strange warmth in his chest. He didn't think of himself as brave. He just did what he thought was right. But to Nera, it had meant everything. "Tell me more," Tom said. "Maybe I'll remember." Nera nodded. "Your ship came to our world during a great storm," she said. "Our people had already left because it was too dangerous. But they forgot me. I was trapped inside the building. The winds were strong, and the ground shook." Tom closed his eyes, trying to picture it. He remembered sitting in the control room of his father's old ship. He remembered watching the storm clouds swirl outside. "My father saw something on the scanner," Tom said. "We went to look." Nera's silver eyes glowed softly. "You found me," she said. "I was weak. I couldn't stand. Your father carried me to your ship." Tom could almost see it now. His father was a strong man, but gentle. Tom had followed him, holding a blanket. They brought the small alien child inside. She had looked frightened, cold, and tired. Tom had given her food. He had wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. "I told you stories," Tom said suddenly. The memory came to him like a light turning on in a dark room. "I didn't know if you could understand, but I talked anyway." Nera laughed softly. "I understood enough," she said. "Your voice was calm. I wasn't afraid anymore." Tom smiled, though he felt a little shy. "You were so quiet," he said. "I thought you were asleep." "I was listening," Nora replied. For a moment, they both sat quietly, remembering. "What happened after that?" Tom asked. Nera looked up, her silver eyes thoughtful. "My people came the next day," she said. "They found your ship. Your father spoke with them. They took me home. I tried to thank you, but I didn't know your words. I watched your ship leave. I thought I would never see you again." Tom nodded slowly. "We didn't stay long. My father liked to keep moving." "I always wanted to find you," Nora said softly. "But I was young. It wasn't until I grew older that I could travel far." Tom looked at her. "And you became an ambassador." Nera smiled. "Yes, I worked to bring peace between different worlds. I always remembered how you helped me without fear, without asking for anything in return." Tom felt quiet inside. He had never thought his small act would matter so much. To him, it was just the right thing to do. To Nera, it was life-changing. "You searched for me all these years?" Tom asked. Nera nodded. "Yes," she said. "I visited many human stations. I asked many questions. I looked for someone who matched my memories. And finally, I found you." Tom gave a soft laugh. "And I was right here, fixing old ships." Nera smiled warmly. "You are still the same," she said. "Kind, quiet, brave." Tom didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to people calling him brave, but Nera meant it. Then Nera's voice grew gentle again. "Tom," she said, "I would like to honor the promise I made to myself long ago." "What promise?" Tom asked. "That if I ever found you," Nera said, "I would bring you to my world, so you can see the place you helped save." Tom's eyes widened a little. "You mean go to Valerian?" "Yes," Nera said. "You would be our guest. You would be welcome there." Tom thought for a moment. He had never traveled far since his father's passing. Brighthaven Station had become his home. But now he felt something new inside him. A feeling he hadn't had in a long time. Adventure. I don't know," Tom said slowly. "I've never been to a world like yours." Nera smiled kindly. "Then let me show you," she said. "You are not alone." Tom looked at her, seeing the hope in her eyes. And for the first time in years, he felt ready to step into something new. "All right," Tom said quietly. "I'll go." And deep inside, he knew this was the start of something wonderful. Tom stood by the small window of his room on Brighthaven Station. He looked out at the stars. They were bright and still, like tiny lamps in a dark sky. He had spent many nights staring at them. But tonight was different. Tonight, he was leaving. He had made his choice. He was going to Valerian with Nera. It was not an easy decision. Tom had lived on Brighthaven for years. He worked hard as a ship technician. He knew every hallway, every shop, and every person who passed by. It was a simple life, but it was safe and familiar. Now he was about to leave it all behind. Tom packed his small bag. He didn't have much. A few clothes, a photo of his father, some old tools he liked to keep. As he zipped the bag closed, he took a deep breath. "You can do this," he told himself quietly. When he stepped outside his room, Nera was waiting. She stood tall and calm, dressed in her white and silver clothes. She smiled when she saw him. "Are you ready?" she asked. Tom nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." They walked together through the station. The halls were bright and busy as always. People hurried past them, carrying crates and supplies. Some of them nodded to Tom as he passed. They had no idea this was his last walk here. He smiled back, feeling a little strange. Soon they reached Dock 12. Nera's ship was waiting there. It was unlike any ship Tom had ever worked on. It was smooth and shiny, shaped like a silver leaf. No sharp edges, no loud engines. It seemed to float above the ground, quiet and graceful. "It's beautiful," Tom said softly. Nera smiled. "It's called Severin. It means starboard in my language." Tom followed her up the ramp and into the ship. The inside was just as smooth as the outside. Soft lights glowed from the walls. The air smelled fresh, like a garden after rain. He felt peaceful right away. There was no noise, no metal clanking or engines humming. It was quiet, but not empty. Tom felt welcome. "This is your seat," Nera said, showing him to a chair near the window. The chair shaped itself to fit him perfectly. Tom smiled in surprise. "It knows," he said. Nera nodded. "Our ships are made to bring comfort." Tom placed his bag by his feet and looked out the window. Brighthaven Station seemed smaller from here. He watched as they lifted off, smooth and silent. No shaking, no loud sounds, just a gentle rise. Soon the station was behind them. Stars stretched out before them like a path. "How long does it take to get to Valerian?" Tom asked. "Not long," Nera said. Our ships move quickly, but I hope you will enjoy the journey." Tom smiled a little. "I've never been a guest on a ship before," he said. "Usually I'm under the floor, fixing something." Nera laughed softly. "Now you can relax." For a while, they sat quietly, watching the stars. Tom felt calm, but curious too. "What's Valerian like?" he asked. Nera's eyes brightened. "It is a green world," she said. "The sky is soft purple at sunset. We have floating gardens and tall crystal towers. The rivers glow at night. It is peaceful." Tom tried to imagine it. It sounded like a dream. Nothing like the dusty ports and busy stations he knew. "You will be honored there," Nora added. "You are the human who showed kindness long ago." Tom shook his head lightly. "I'm just me." "But that is enough," Nora said. They shared a quiet moment. Then Nera stood and offered him something in her hand. It was a small silver stone on a chain. It glowed softly, like starlight. "This is a Valari token of friendship," she said. "I want you to have it." Tom took it carefully. It was warm in his hand. "Thank you," he said. "You are welcome," Noah replied. As they traveled through space, Tom thought about how life could change in a single day. One moment he was fixing wires. The next he was on a ship heading to another world. And for the first time in years, he felt excited for what would come next. Tom stood near the window as the ship moved smoothly through space. Stars passed by like tiny white lights, and everything was calm. He still could not believe it. A few hours ago, he was on Brighthaven Station. Now he was on an alien ship, heading to a world he had never seen before. Nera walked over to him. Her silver eyes were soft and kind. "We are almost there," she said with a gentle smile. Tom took a deep breath. "I feel nervous," he admitted. "It is natural," Nera said kindly. "But you do not need to be afraid. Valerian is peaceful." Tom nodded. He trusted Nera. She had come all this way to find him. She remembered something he had almost forgotten himself. And now she was offering him something he never thought he would have, a place in her world. A soft sound filled the air, like a song from far away. Nora touched the control panel, and the window grew wider. Tom leaned closer and gasped. Valerian was beautiful. The planet below was green and blue. Long silver rivers cut across the land like bright ribbons. Floating islands hung in the sky, glowing softly in the light of the two suns. Great crystal towers sparkled, rising from the ground like shining trees. "It's amazing," Tom whispered. Nera smiled, pleased by his reaction. "This is my home," she said. "And now it is yours too." The ship moved lower, passing through soft purple clouds. Tom could see gardens hanging from the sides of buildings. Bright flowers floated gently in the air. There were small creatures with wings, like butterflies, flying around in circles. Everything seemed alive, but peaceful. Soon the ship landed softly on a large platform. The floor was made of smooth white stone. Soft lights glowed along the edges. There were many people waiting, tall Valari with silver eyes and soft blue skin. They wore flowing clothes in soft colors, like water and sky. Tom felt nervous again. "What if they don't like me?" he asked quietly. Nera shook her head gently. "They will," she said. "You are honored here." The door of the ship opened. A warm breeze touched Tom's face. It smelled like flowers and fresh rain. He followed Nera down the ramp. The Valari people bowed their heads slightly as Nera and Tom approached. One of them stepped forward. She was tall, with silver markings on her face. She wore a long robe with shining patterns. "Welcome home, Nera," the woman said. Then she turned to Tom. "Welcome to Valerian, Tom of Earth." Tom bowed his head politely. "Thank you," he said. The woman smiled. "I am Sira. I am the keeper of peace here." Tom glanced at Nera, who gave him a small nod. "It is an honor to meet you," Tom said. Cyrus' smile grew warmer. "You showed kindness when you were a child," she said. "Now we show kindness to you." Tom wasn't sure what to say. He had never been treated like this before. On Brighthaven, he was just a worker. But here, they treated him like someone special. They walked together through the city. The streets were wide and smooth. There were no loud machines or rushing crowds. Instead, people moved calmly, and soft music filled the air. Trees with glowing leaves lined the paths. Some of them had small lights floating among their branches. Tom noticed that many Bellary people smiled as they passed by. Some even waved. He smiled back, feeling a little less nervous. After a while, they reached a quiet garden. There was a pool of clear water in the center. Flowers grew along the edges, and soft lights floated above them. Nera turned to Tom. "This place is called the Garden of Memories," she said. "It is where we remember those who helped us." Tom looked around, feeling the peace in the air. Nera handed him a small stone. It was smooth and warm, with a symbol on it that looked like a star. "This is for you," she said. "Place it in the pool." Tom stepped forward slowly. He knelt by the water and placed the stone in it. The water glowed softly. A ripple spread out in perfect circles. For a moment, everything was quiet. Nera spoke softly behind him. "Now your memory will always be part of our world." Tom stood up slowly. He looked at her, feeling something deep inside. He had come to Valerian as a visitor. But now he felt like he was becoming part of something bigger. "Thank you," Tom said quietly. Nera smiled. "No, thank you, Tom." As the sun set, the sky turned soft purple. Lights danced in the air like tiny stars. Tom stood there, watching them, feeling peaceful in a way he never had before. And he knew this was just the beginning. Tom woke up to soft music and warm sunlight filling the room. He lay still for a moment, listening to the gentle sound of wind chimes outside his window. It was peaceful, not like Brighthaven Station, where loud noises and voices echoed through the metal halls. Here, everything felt calm and light. He sat up slowly and looked around. The room was simple but beautiful. The walls were smooth and pale blue. Small lights floated quietly near the ceiling, glowing softly. The bed was shaped to fit him perfectly, and it felt like resting on soft clouds. Tom smiled. He had never felt this rested before. A soft knock came at the door. "Come in," Tom said. The door opened, and Nera stepped inside. She wore a new robe today, silver with a soft green trim. Her eyes shone as she smiled at him. "Good morning, Tom," she said. "Did you sleep well?" Tom nodded. "Better than I ever have." "I'm glad," she said. "Today is special. We will hold the ceremony of memory." Tom tilted his head. "What is that?" Nera walked over and sat on a chair nearby. "It is a tradition on Valerian. We gather to share stories of those who helped us in the past. We thank them and offer them a place in our history. Today, we honor you." Tom felt surprised. "Me? But I only helped you that one time when we were young." Nera smiled gently. "That one time changed everything. You helped me when no one else did. Your kindness brought hope, Tom. And hope is very powerful." Tom looked down at his hands. He remembered that day long ago. He was just a boy, and Nera had been lost and frightened. He hadn't thought much of it back then, but to her, it had mattered. Nera stood and reached out her hand. "Come, we must get ready." Tom followed her through the quiet hallways of the building. The floors were smooth and cool under his feet. Along the way, other Valari people bowed their heads respectfully as they passed. Tom still wasn't used to it, but he tried to smile and bow back. They entered a large garden filled with tall trees and bright flowers. A small stream ran through the middle, its water clear and glowing softly. There were many Valari gathered there. They wore beautiful robes in all colors, soft blues, greens, silvers, and whites. They stood in a large circle, quiet and calm. At the center of the circle was a stone platform. It looked like crystal, shining in the sunlight. Nura led Tom to the platform and gestured for him to stand there. Sira, the keeper of peace, stepped forward. She held a long silver staff with a glowing stone at the top. Her voice was gentle but strong. "We are gathered to remember," Sira said, "and to honor Tom of Earth, who showed kindness when it was needed most." The crowd bowed their heads. Tom felt a little nervous standing there, but Nera gave him an encouraging smile. Sira continued, "Tom did not know us. We were strangers to him. Yet he helped one of our own with no thought of reward. His kindness reached across stars." Tom felt his cheeks grow warm. He didn't think he had done anything special, but he stayed quiet and listened. Nera stepped forward then. She spoke softly. "I was lost and alone," she said. "But Tom found me. He gave me water and food. He stayed with me until I was safe. He did not ask for anything. He was just kind." Tom remembered that day clearly now. He had found her sitting behind a building on a strange little station. She had looked so scared. He had been scared too, but he didn't leave her. And now, all these years later, she was thanking him. Sira lifted the silver staff high. The glowing stone shone brighter. "Let his memory become part of ours," she said. The crowd repeated the words softly. "Let his memory become part of ours." Then soft music began to play. Small lights floated through the air like tiny stars. They circled Tom gently, making him feel like he was standing in the middle of the sky. Nera held out her hands. In them was a crystal shaped like a small star. "This is the star of remembrance," she said. "It is for you." Tom took it carefully. The crystal felt warm and light in his hands. It glowed softly with a gentle light. "You are part of our story now," Nura said quietly. Tom looked at the people around him. Their eyes were kind. Their smiles were warm. He felt something inside him shift. For the first time, he felt like he belonged somewhere. "Thank you," Tom said softly. Sira smiled. "No, Tom of Earth. Thank you." The ceremony ended with a song. It was soft and beautiful, like a lullaby. Tom stood quietly, holding the star, listening. The sound filled the air and his heart. He knew he would never forget this moment. Tom sat in the quiet garden, holding the glowing star crystal in his hands. It still felt warm, just like when Nara had given it to him during the ceremony of memory. Around him, the soft sounds of water flowing and birds singing filled the air. He took a deep breath, feeling calm. But inside, he was still thinking about everything that had happened. Why had Nara remembered him after all these years? Why did he feel like there was something more he didn't understand? He looked up as Nara walked toward him. Her long robe moved gently with the breeze, and her silver eyes were soft and kind as always. She sat down beside him on the smooth stone bench. "You are quiet today," she said. Tom gave her a small smile. "Just thinking." Nara tilted her head a little. "About what?" Tom was silent for a moment, then said, "About why I'm here. I mean, you told me I helped you once, when we were young. But I feel like there's something more, something you haven't told me yet." Nara looked at him for a long moment. She didn't speak right away. Then she nodded slowly. You were right, she said softly. There is more. Tom turned toward her, curious but calm. He trusted Nera. She had been kind to him ever since they met again on Bright Haven Station. If she had waited to tell him something, he believed it was for a good reason. Nera took a deep breath. When I was young, my people were in danger, she began. We had been searching for a new home. Our old world was no longer safe, so we traveled far through space. But many of us were afraid. We had lost hope. Tom listened closely as she spoke. When I became lost on Bright Haven Station, Nora continued, I was not just a child who wandered away. I was the future leader of my people. My mother was the high speaker of our world. I was meant to take her place one day. Tom's eyes widened a little. He hadn't known this before. I was frightened, Nora said quietly. I thought I was alone, but you found me. You shared food and water with me. You told me stories to help me feel safe. You stayed with me until my people found me again. Tom nodded slowly. I remember. Nera gave him a gentle smile. What you did changed me. It made me believe that kindness could be found, even far away from home. And when I returned to my people, I told them about you. Tom looked surprised. You told them about me. Yes, Nera said. And they listened. Your kindness gave us new hope. We decided to believe in others again. We made peace with other worlds because of the story I told. Tom sat quietly, thinking about this. He had never imagined that something so small, offering kindness to a lost girl, could have such a big effect. There is one more thing, Nera said softly. When I became the High Speaker, I promised myself I would find you again. I wanted to thank you in person, but I also wanted to ask you something important. Tom looked at her carefully. What is it? Nera hesitated for a moment. Then she said, will you stay with us? Will you be part of Valerian? Not just as a guest, but as one of us? Tom blinked. He hadn't expected that question. You mean live here? Nera nodded. Yes, you belong here, Tom. We need people like you. People who believe in kindness, even when it's hard. You could help guide us toward new friendships with other worlds. Tom thought about his life on Bright Haven Station. It had been lonely and hard. But here, he felt peaceful. He felt like he was part of something bigger, something important. He smiled slowly. Yes, I'll stay. Nera's eyes lit up. You will. Tom nodded. I think this is where I'm meant to be. Nera reached out and took his hand gently. Thank you, Tom. They sat there for a while, quiet and peaceful. The sun was setting, and the sky turned soft shades of pink and purple. Tiny lights floated in the air like stars coming to life. And Tom knew he had found his place. Tom stood at the edge of the great hall, looking out over the gathering of Valeri people. The room was bright and open, with tall glass walls showing the soft blue sky outside. Light floated in the air like tiny stars, making everything glow. It was beautiful, peaceful in a way Tom had never known before. He had been on Valerian for several weeks now. Each day had brought something new. He had learned about their ways, their stories, and their dreams for the future. And now today, he was being welcomed as one of them. Nera came to stand beside him. Her silver robe shimmered as she moved, and her eyes were full of warmth. Are you ready, Tom? She asked softly. Tom smiled at her. I think so. Nera nodded. This is an important moment, not just for you, but for all of us. Together, they walked to the center of the hall, where a round platform stood. The crowd became quiet as Tom stepped up. He could feel their eyes on him, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt welcoming. Sira, the keeper of peace, stood before him, holding a small silver bowl filled with clear water. She smiled gently. "Tom of Earth," she said in a calm voice, "you have shown us kindness and courage. You have reminded us of the good that can be found in the universe. Do you wish to join us, not as a guest, but as a true member of Valerian?" Tom nodded. "Yes, I do." Sierra dipped her fingers into the water and touched his forehead with a drop. It felt cool and light. "Then we welcome you, Tom of Valerian," Sierra said. The crowd spoke as one. "Welcome." Soft music began to play, gentle and beautiful. Tom felt his heart warm as he looked around at all the smiling faces. He wasn't an outsider anymore. He was home. Later, Tom stood by the garden with Nura. They watched the floating lights dance above the flowers as evening came. "I never thought this would happen," Tom said quietly. "I always thought I would be alone, just moving from one place to another." Nura smiled. "You were never alone, Tom. Sometimes we just have to find where we belong." He nodded. "And sometimes someone remembers us when we don't even remember ourselves." Nara laughed softly. "Yes, I remembered you." Tom looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," she said. "Why did you wait so long to find me?" he asked. "All these years, why now?" Nara's face became gentle and serious. "I had to wait until I was ready, and I had to wait until you were ready too. Sometimes the right moment takes time." Tom thought about that. It made sense in a way he couldn't explain. It was true. If they had met earlier, maybe things would have been different. Maybe he wouldn't have been ready to believe in something new. But now he was. "What happens next?" Tom asked. Nara smiled. "We build something together. We make new friendships with other worlds. We share stories, just like you shared yours with me long ago." Tom smiled back. "I'd like that." A soft bell rang in the distance. Nara looked toward it. "It's time." "For what?" Tom asked. "For your first meeting as an advisor," she said with a playful smile. Tom laughed softly. "I hope I'm ready." "You are," Nara said kindly. "You have always been ready." They walked together toward the council building. It was tall and round, made of glass and stone. Inside, leaders from many worlds had gathered. Tom could see humans, Valari, and even other species he didn't yet know the names of. They were all waiting to talk, to listen, and to learn from each other. As Tom took his seat, he realized something important. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about all of them working together for something better. He glanced at Nara. She smiled at him in a way that made him feel calm. "Let's begin," Sierra said, and the meeting started. They spoke of peace, of helping those in need, and of building friendships that would last. Tom listened carefully, and when it was his turn to speak, he spoke from the heart. He told them about kindness, about hope, and about how small actions could change lives. When the meeting ended, Nara turned to him. "You spoke well." "Thanks," Tom said quietly. "I just told the truth." And in that moment, Tom knew he had found his purpose. He was home, not just on a planet, but among people who cared. And together, they would make the future brighter. Tom stood quietly on the balcony of the council hall, looking at the sky above Valerian. The stars shone bright tonight, like tiny lamps guiding travelers home. The cool wind touched his face gently. He smiled to himself. It had been many months since he first arrived on this beautiful world, and his life had changed in ways he never thought possible. He heard soft footsteps behind him and turned. Nora was there, holding 2 cups of warm tea. She handed one to him. "You always come here after meetings," she said kindly. Tom nodded. "It helps me think." Nara smiled. What are you thinking about tonight? Tom looked up at the sky again. About how it all began. I keep remembering the day we met on Bright Haven Station. I was so tired back then, Nora. I didn't think I could keep going. And then you remembered me. I never forgot you, Nora said softly. Even when I returned to Valerian as a child, I often looked up at the stars and wondered where you were. I knew I had to find you again. Tom took a sip of tea. It was sweet, with a soft, calming flavor. He smiled. I'm glad you did. They stood together in quiet peace for a while. Below them, the lights of the city glowed softly. The Larry children played in the gardens, and people from many worlds walked together in harmony. It was a place of hope. Nera broke the silence. There's something we'd like to show you tomorrow. Tom looked at her. What is it? She smiled. It's a surprise. The next morning, Tom followed Nera through the quiet streets of Valerian. They walked toward a large building made of smooth stone and glass. It stood in a peaceful valley, with trees and flowers blooming all around it. Birds sang in the trees, their songs soft and joyful. What is this place? Tom asked. You'll see, Nera said with a gentle smile. Inside, the building was bright and filled with light. On the walls were paintings and carvings showing the history of Valerian, their journeys through the stars, their search for peace, and the friendships they had made with other worlds. Tom stopped in front of one large painting. It showed a young human boy sitting with a small Velari girl. They were sharing food and smiling. Tom stared at it quietly. This, he whispered. This is us. Nera nodded. Yes, this is the Hall of Memories. We tell stories here. We remind ourselves of what kindness can do. Tom slowly walked along the wall, looking at each painting. He saw scenes of humans and Valeri working together, helping each other, and building a new future. Your story became our story, Nera said softly. It helped us remember what was important. Tom felt his heart full. He never imagined that something so simple, sharing food and kindness, could grow into something so big. He smiled quietly to himself. Later, as they sat under the tall trees outside the hall, Nera spoke again. There is one more thing. Tom raised an eyebrow. Another surprise. She laughed softly. Yes. She handed him a small stone. It was smooth and warm, and there were soft carvings on it. Tom ran his fingers over the words. He smiled when he read them. Friendship begins with kindness. That is your message, Nera said. It will always be part of Valerian now. Tom held the stone tightly for a moment. He thought about all he had lost in the past and all he had found here. A home, a family, a future. As the sun set, Nera turned toward him. You've changed our world, Tom. Tom shook his head. No, we changed it together. They smiled at each other, knowing the truth of those words. Together, they had built something new, something better. That night, as Tom walked back to his home, he looked up at the stars one more time. They were still shining brightly, just as they had when he was a boy lost on Bright Haven Station. But now he wasn't lost anymore. He was home. And the memory of kindness, the simple act that had started it all, would live on forever.